So we know after years of being with the Patriots, Tom Brady went from New England to Tampa Bay, went to the NFC South to win a Super Bowl. Could that be the same case for Bill Belichick moving from the Patriots to the NFC South this year? Falcons now have an open head coaching job. Arthur Smith gone. Rumors are Arthur Blank very much interested in the future all-time winningest head coach in NFL history. Kyle Ledbetter, Bill Belichick, Atlanta. Does that make sense? Does that sound weird to you? Off-putting? What say you?
You know, a few weeks ago, Juju, you brought up the point that the Chargers should trade whatever it costs to go get Bill Belichick from the Patriots to come to the Chargers. And the thing that I told you is that Bill Belichick's too good for that job, man. He's too good to go to the godforsaken Chargers and coach with Dean Spanos as his owner. He's too good for that. And now here we are 3 weeks later, and there's an actual chance Bill Belichick could end up with the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are like NFC Chargers. Like everything that happens to the Falcons is just cursed and chaotic. Under Arthur Smith, just none of it made any sense. The Falcons are such a godforsaken franchise, and yet I am disgusted by myself because I think that might actually be the best fit if Belichick is going to coach again next season, not New England. And God, that is so gross. That is so gross for his sake that might end up being the best option on the table for him.
Okay, so he goes into that division, and is he already the best coach in that division? Is he the best coach if he enters most divisions, first of all? But like you look at that division, you look at the Saints, they're probably going to fire Dennis Allen, or maybe, I don't know, who cares? You look at right now Carolina and their situation, Tampa, Todd Bowles, they made the playoffs, which saved Todd Bowles' job. But yeah, Bill Belichick, he goes in that division. He's ultimately the coaching advantage in that division over all four of those teams. But the quarterback is the one remaining mystery. If we both agree that Bill Belichick is just not great at picking his own groceries, picking his own offensive talent, that's not the problem in Atlanta. They have tons of offensive talent. They just have a ton of offensive talent that hasn't been getting used well. You know, I like Atlanta. If he's not going to the Chargers, if he's not going to the Raiders, if he's not going to the Cowboys, because it sounds like Jerry Jones is keeping Mike McCarthy, then I like Atlanta out of like the open head coaching jobs he could go to. I don't want him going to Washington. I don't want him going to Carolina. Those are both awful jobs. So I think Atlanta's better, or at least a better situation right now.
I can understand why he'd want to go to Washington, though. He's from Maryland. He obviously had a connection to that franchise with his dad. So I could understand him wanting to go to Washington just for non-football related reasons. And by the way, with the new ownership group, he would get a lot of money and a lot of power to go coach in that Washington organization. They might even get the keys to pick the groceries in Washington. That might be something they do. Who knows? But with the Falcons part, first of all, you might have heard me just release a laugh in the middle of your set, which I just have to say, like, saying the Saints might fire Dennis Allen, I don't know, who cares, is just the perfect way to describe that. It's just, they might fire him, they might not, doesn't really matter. It's fine. They'll fire him 7 games into next season once they're 2-5 and Derek Carr is
Make
playing
Jameis
terrible.
Winston the head coach.
But Monty Jones made the great point. If Jameis Winston has the power to override you, you are not in charge anymore. You're not the one in charge of that ship. Maybe Jameis got to go, but if it was a team decision, that's 11 people who have who think you are not the man in charge here. So yeah, I mean, obviously Bill Belichick would be the best coach in the NFC South. I think Bill Belichick might be entering the greatest coach in the NFC South since the NFC South existed. It's only been around for 22 years. He might be the greatest coach in NFC South history. No offense, Peyton, he did win a Super Bowl there, but you know, it's Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick going to the Falcons would be really interesting for the Falcons' sake, because you're right, they already have the ready-made pieces on the offense. The defense at times played great last year, but what was so unique about last year's Falcons defense is they would go from having these really strong performances, often against not terrible teams and not terrible quarterbacks, and then on the flip side, they would just completely fall apart at times last year. Like just go revert right back to being the Falcons teams of the 4 years post Super Bowl under Dan Quinn, where it was like, is our defense bad? Yes. Are we going to do anything about it? No, we're just going to keep doubling down on, we're going to score 30 points. Our opponents are going to score 30 points. We're going to have a tie game with 2 minutes to go, and we're going to win half of them. which was basically the Falcons before Arthur Smith got there. So maybe that Belichick comes in there, he gets more out of the defense. We know he schematically is still doing things
Yeah.
on the defensive side of the ball that we can't explain, and even NFL experts beyond our level of expertise struggle to explain just how smart Belichick is on some of those defensive schematics. So if you give him an AJ Terrell, you give him a Jesse Bates, you give him a Calais Campbell and Anya Mata on that defensive line, I think you might see some improvement from the Falcons defense, and not just improvement like they had last year where they just spent a bunch of money and they went from the worst defense in the league to a below average defense. They might actually make the step to being a top end defense. And if that's the case, the offense will eventually come around with at least a competent offensive mind in the door.
Yeah. And, the funny part about that, and it's going to sound gross to a lot of people, but competent offensive mind in the door, I think wherever Bill Belichick goes, I think he's bringing Josh McDaniels with him. And Josh McDaniels, the head coach, we know the drawbacks there. We know the faults there of Josh McDaniels, the head coach. But as an offensive coordinator, it's obviously worked out for years in New England. It worked out even in the Mac Jones season a couple of years ago. So at least with the offensive skill position players they have there, if they could get the quarterback figured out, which we'll see, that's, again, the big albatross as far as what is going to happen with this Atlanta team moving forward, because it's not going to be Desmond Ridder. It's not going to be Taylor Heineke. You're looking at the draft. Okay. Michael Penix, the best thing that might have happened for him is performing poorly in the national title game, because he's going to fall in the draft. And maybe that means he gets to go to Atlanta. He gets to have Kyle Pitts. He gets to have Bijan Robinson. He gets to have Drake London, improving young offensive line. So maybe Michael Penix is the guy that falls to them in there. Maybe Atlanta gets a little frisky and decides they want to trade a bunch of assets to get up there in the draft. It's going to be kind of hard, just because if you look at the top 30 of the draft right now, all three of the teams at the top of the draft are quarterback needy franchises. Maybe they go after a Justin Fields. Maybe they could get him cheap off the Bears, which, again, let's put the Josh McDaniels offense there. We saw it work at times with Cam Newton. Could he essentially use the offense he developed around Cam Newton with a Justin Fields if he made that a thing? Or Kirk Cousins? We'll see. Again, he said he'd take a hometown discount with Minnesota potentially if they wanted to re-sign him. But if Kirk Cousins went to the Falcons with the weapons they have, Josh McDaniels goes there, Bill Belichick is fixing the defense, then suddenly you're looking at Atlanta and you're like, okay, this team is probably the favorite in the NFC South next year and potentially could win a playoff game or two. That's at least how I would look at the Falcons a lot differently. If you told me Bill Belichick goes there, they fix the offensive scheme, they use their weapons more. The only thing I will add, if you're a Bijan Robinson dynasty owner, you are going to be still frustrated moving forward. Because if there's one thing Bill Belichick is known for in fantasy football circles, it's rotating his running backs no matter how talented the running back is. So yes, you would still be frustrated in that regard.
Yeah, I understand that point, which, in fairness, you don't necessarily need Bill Belichick to execute some of those ideas that you're talking about there. Like, for example, if they went the second round Michael Penix route, because they have a pick at the top of the second round, maybe they trade into the first round for the 5th-year option, whatever you want to call it. But like, say they go the Michael Penix route, I would do that like only if you get a more offensive-minded coach in the door, like a Todd Monken. Obviously, he was at the University of Georgia a couple years ago. Bring Todd Monken down from the Baltimore Ravens potentially and run that spread type offense. I don't think Kalen DeBoer would leave Washington for that position, especially without the guarantee of a quarterback. But, you could at least make the call and see if Kalen DeBoer is interested in interviewing for that job. But if you go get Monken, that would be an interesting idea. I know they've spent 3 consecutive first-round picks on skill position players, but I think they should maybe pick another skill position player in the draft. I know it sounds stupid, but I think,
well, this draft, I know a lot of mock draft experts. There's a couple of high-profile offensive linemen too. Maybe they go that route. Like, it couldn't hurt to build that offensive line a little bit better, especially, I guess, if you could guarantee me that you're getting like a quarterback either with that round 2 pick or you sign someone in free agency. If they could get someone in free agency or trade for a veteran in free agency, then I think that opens the door for what they could do with their number 8 pick. And I would say, like, I'm all for you're going that route, either skill position again or going and fixing the offensive line, because no team has ever been worse for drafting a high profile offensive lineman or a high graded offensive lineman. It's not exciting. It's not
Yeah.
the thing that fans get excited about. I don't think most fans, even when you're getting like a Penei Sewell or a Rashawn Slater, most fans don't go, oh, yeah, exactly what I wanted. Show me the highlight tape. No, it's just not like that. Most offensive linemen don't
It's
have
one of my
highlight reels like
favorite.
Trent
Yeah.
Williams.
That's one of my favorite things that happens in the draft when like the Panthers draft Ike Ekwonu and their fan base has to like pretend to be excited about drafting Ike Ekwonu. Like I love whenever I get to see that during draft day. I'm checking the depth chart real quick on the Falcons because I believe that they don't really have a need at tackle. I know, yeah, they have Jake Matthews at left tackle and Caleb McGarry as the right tackle. So I think they're kind of good on the tackle position. If those are the two at the top of the draft that are, you know, available, it's Joe Alt and the guy from Penn State whose name is eluding me. But like, I think they're kind of good at the tackle position. It's more the interior offensive line that they might want to address. And look, man, if Alt goes early in the draft and maybe the Penn State guy goes early too, I mean, you're telling me that a receipt, regardless of who they bring in as quarterback, whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Justin Fields, whether it's they bring back Heineke with another option like a Gardner Minshew or something like that. Like whatever they choose at the quarterback position, like you're telling me that a offensive skill position group that includes Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Roma Dunze, Kyle Pitts. I mean, that team would just be absolutely awesome to watch
Yeah.
happen in real time. And I think they can make it work. Maybe not with Josh McDaniels, because now we've kind of moved away from the Belichick aspect to more of the Falcons side of it. But if they did that and brought in Monken, they got Ben Johnson. Maybe they went and got someone else. I think it could totally work. It would totally be awesome to put those pieces together and just let the offense flush itself out.
Now, you mentioned as far as desirability of head coaching job, I don't think Arthur Blank is a bad owner to work for relative to other owners. It seems like he's willing to commit to you, give you time yourself. I look at this Arthur Smith situation. I think Arthur Smith would have still had a job had it not been for that blow up at the end of the week 18 game. As crazy as it is to say, if it wasn't for Arthur Smith having that very public shouting match with Dennis Allen at the end of the week 18 game, I think he would still have a job. I think Arthur Blank was just so frustrated. He's like, we're really going to go 7-10 another year. You're going to publicly embarrass my team at the end of the season, where that's going to be the last image of our season. Now it's going to be the last image of your head coaching tenure. I just can't do this anymore. So I'm going to, especially in a year where you do have a Belichick, where you do have a Harbaugh out there, where you do have Vrabel out there. I mean, Vrabel's out there too. If, you know, Atlanta wants to get frisky and want to hire a coach that has some pelts on the wall. This was the year to move off of Arthur Smith if you're going to do it, because you know that there are some head coaching candidates out there worth grabbing. And yeah, I think Arthur Blank, this job isn't the worst job to have. I think that, I mean, heck, even before him, Dan Quinn, like maybe got a year longer than most fans would have allowed him. So I think that he's at least a committed owner and an owner that's been around a lot of winning, because even though the Falcons haven't won at all, they haven't won the Super Bowl. They've won a lot of games in the last 2 decades. You know, they bet right on Mike Vick up until, you know, the scandal that happened that ended his career there. They bet right on Matt Ryan immediately after Mike Vick and were able to win a lot of games with Matt Ryan over the years, go to Super Bowl in 2016. It just, in the last couple years under, you know, Arthur Smith, just they've been mediocre. They've had a lot of mediocre over the last few years. Although it's not fun being mediocre, at least they've never been really bad. They haven't been outright awful, I would say.
They did have the year they fired Dan Quinn was their awful year, and they ended up getting Kyle Pitts as a result of it. But you're right, they have not been awful. And the problem is not Arthur Blank. The problem is the Falcons. The Falcons are the Falcons, with a long documented history of being the Falcons. And what's funny is I don't even have to explain it anymore. Everyone here knows exactly what I'm talking about when I say the Falcons are the Falcons. Not just the fact that they've now gone 7-10 in 3 consecutive seasons with Arthur Smith. Not just the fact that before that they went, after blowing the 28-3 Super Bowl thing, they went 25-25 over the next 3 seasons. And then in the last season that they fired Dan Quinn and Raheem Morris took over as the interim, they blew 10 leads in 1 season which is absolutely ridiculous to think about. We know the Falcons are the Falcons. And look, if Bill Belichick ends up going there, awesome for him. If Bill Belichick ends up going to Washington, I think that Mike McDonald would be a great pickup for them, going from the defensive coordinator in Baltimore to go there and bring in some sort of offensive head coach, maybe from the college ranks to work with whoever they have there. There's a lot of good options for the Falcons. Hell, I'm disgusted that I think this might be the best option for Bill Belichick after leaving the New England Patriots, the team that he took to 10 Super Bowls in 20 years. I'm disgusted that the Falcons job might be the best fit for Bill Belichick at this point. On Belichick's.
I mean, what a win for Arthur Blank, though, if Bill Belichick can break Don Shula's record with your organization, because that was probably the biggest thing about this whole Bill Belichick potential moving on from the Patriots thing. I always thought like Robert Kraft would want to at least hold out for that, to at least have that record book on the Patriots ledger. But unfortunately, if he would stay with the Patriots, it would have taken a long time to get to Don Shula's record at 2 wins a year. He goes to the Falcons. Maybe they win 7 games this year again. I don't know. Or maybe they at least get 9-10 wins, depending on if they fix the quarterback or not. Gets a little bit closer, and then maybe he's gaining Don Shula's record in 2-3 years as opposed to 10 with New England it was looking like.
You're telling me that Bill Belichick with this Falcons team is going to lose the division to Baker Mayfield? That's what's going to happen here.
I hope not. Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles. Again, the coaching advantage would be paramount in this division moving forward if Bill Belichick went there. But anyway, guys, all right, Bill Belichick, Falcons, they're circling the waters. Do they end up bringing in Bill Belichick and all his wins over to their franchise? Let us know in the comment section. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias. From Juju and Kyle. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.